if they're shading over the top or underneath or whatever, this route really does a good job of getting open right here. So you can just throw that you could even lob that over the top there, and you have big potential for a huge gain. All right, it is ebook time. This is something I had a lot of fun doing a couple years ago, but just haven't really had the inspiration to do since, until today. This is my Carolina Panthers offensive ebook. It's a spread to run scheme that features a heavy mix of RPOs, shotgun runs, and a plethora of passing concepts for every type of defense you'll face. It's based on the spread concepts I've been running for about a year now, but in the more manageable Panthers playbook. Also, if you're doing custom playbooks, these plays will be readily available to you, whereas the ones in the spread playbook wouldn't be. Anyway, the entire playbook or ebook is in this video. I'm not going to do multiple parts, and I'm not going to charge for it. It's all right here. However, like last time, I will make a reference sheet available for purchase. It features handy diagrams like this, which show the play art, different adjustments, and the types of defenses the play is good against. This is something I personally use, so I wanted to make it available for you guys as well. So if you want that extra bit of a bonus, or you just want to support what I do, the purchase link is in the description. It is $5. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the content. There are 24 core plays, each with multiple adaptations and different reads and different things to key on, but they're all time-stamped in this video, so you can, come back to them as you practice and grow with the book. Now, because it will be a pretty long video, I won't go into too much detail on each one, but if you have any questions or thoughts on any one of them, feel free to leave a comment down below on that. Now, 24 plays is a lot for Madden, but I really believe diversification in your play calling eases some of the pressure on you, as the defense can't really focus, they can't focus their setup on you as easily, ultimately making you more effective. And the reference sheet really helps with this, where you can get a quick glance at your playbook and call great plays that you would otherwise forget about in some key moments. Now, of course, there are many other amazing plays in this playbook that even I personally use, but I focused on the 3 best formations to keep things simple for now. These include gun doubles offset weak. You also have gun doubles Y off and gun trips. These are really, really, really good formations. But first, we'll go ahead and start with the bread and butter running play out of this ebook, which is in gun doubles offset weak, and the play is RPO read bubble. So we'll do that, and we'll just come out in a nickel set, cover 2. Now, before I get started, I want to really briefly talk about personnel. This is you don't need any really special personnel or abilities or anything like that. It's really kind of up to you. There's no special hot routes you need to make any of this tick. It's all going to work as it's intended to, but I'll just let you know what I run just to make things maybe that make things easier for me, and I think it'll make things a lot easier for you as well. So first of all, I have speed across the board. So wide receivers, tight ends, running back. Speed is by far and away the most important stat in the game, so I try to do that everywhere, obviously except for the defensive line. So including your quarterback. Now, if you want, you can adapt this to your liking. Of course, this is up to you. But I think because there are a lot of read option RPO type plays in this playbook, including this one, having that fast mobile quarterback really opens things up. And in that matter, I personally put escape artist on them because it makes these read RPOs much better. So he gets a little bit of a speed boost on his when he gets the quarterback keep read. and then you're able to get to that edge a little bit quicker and so on. I also put on gift wrap for him, just because I throw a lot of kind of quicker passes, RPOs and stuff like that. And personally, I don't have the best wide receivers, so gift wrap helps them hold on to the ball a little bit more. I put identifier on my center. I think this is really the only ability in the game for me that I absolutely have to have. The other ones are kind of nice to have. Identifier really helps me know exactly where the user is, because a lot of these things are kind of quick pre-snap reads, and it really depends on where that user is. So it helps so much. Otherwise, Slot-O-Matic helps a lot, especially against man coverage and things like that. So I'll put Slot-O-Matic on my third or slot wide receiver, and that really helps open things up. And then, just because I have one extra AP, I'll put reach forward on my running back, which is nice to have here and there. But that's essentially it for personnel. Of course, these things are totally up to you to kind of explore and adapt to your own liking. So I mentioned how the RPO read bubble is really the bread and butter running play out of this whole book, really. I think this is really one of the best formations in the entire game. I think it's really underused, and a lot of people don't really have good defenses against it. And it just has great passing plays, great RPOs, and within those RPOs, you have great run options as well. Why I like this, as opposed to just an inside zone, is that you're protecting yourself against heavy boxes and gap shooters, essentially. So if you have a heavy box where people are bringing in, some of these guys, or bringing in other, really stacking the box, you have two alerts. So you have a bubble, and then you have a little hitch on the outside. So if any time they're open pre-snap, you just snap it and just throw it out to them immediately, and you should be able to get just a few yards without any sort of hesitation. So number one, you're protecting against heavy boxes, so that's really good. You're also protecting in some senses against run commit, which you almost never see, but maybe towards the end of the game, if you get a run commit, you can just pull that and throw it to one of your options for an easy gain, where you can go get your first down and slide or go for a touchdown, whatever you want. So you're protecting against those, and then also especially importantly this year, is you're protecting against these really aggressive gap shooters. So i.e., if you are having your opponent using the linebacker or the safety subbed in a linebacker, they often at the snap are able to easily, if they're good, find some of those gap shoot lanes and hit you in the backfield. Now RPOs, especially one like this, really protects you against that, because first of all, if the end comes crashing towards the running back, you can pull that with your quarterback and run outside of where your opponent is trying to gap shoot, so they'll never be able to catch you with that. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that, and most of the time, the better players will have their option set to conservative, so this end in a read option will stay home for the quarterback. So most of the times, this actually ends up very similar to an inside zone, is where you're just going to be handing it off, because I think a lot of the better players aren't using base line so much, especially with a lot of man coverage and things like that. They're right up on your wide receivers, so you don't always have the gift alerts like the bubble and the hitch, and then you don't always even have the quarterback keep. So a lot of times it ends up just being a run play, but it's better than an inside zone because you gain a blocker. So in this case, the left tackle, instead of blocking the defensive end to the side, he's going to immediately target the next level, which is the linebacker here, which can sometimes be that gap shooting linebacker. Or even if they're gap shooting from this side, everything shifts over and you have a +1 blocker. So again, it's like inside, it ends up being just an inside handoff, but you're getting an extra blocker, which is really nice. So like I was saying, most of the time people will be running their their option defense on conservative, so you're not going to be pulling that with your quarterback, but you still, you have these lanes to run through in the middle. Just got to be patient and hold off that sprint button. Now, one thing you should note is that you do still, to this day, come across a lot of people that put inside stuff on their interior linemen. So right here, Grady Jarrett has inside stuff. I think, he doesn't really make much of an impact here because I have some pretty stacked offensive linemen, so I think some of those guys have post up and they just wash him out of the play. But if you don't have, post up or some of these abilities, a little tip, if you didn't already know, is that you can just double team the player with inside stuff and he won't blow up into the backfield. It doesn't change the blocking at all. It's still the same blocking. It just cancels the inside stuff. It makes it less effective. So what I always do is I'll check to see, now you can't do it in practice mode, but I will check to see if there's any inside stuff on the interior guys, and if there is, I will just double team them and I should be okay. Now, in terms of the rest of the read option, sometimes you will get that quarterback keep read. So in this case, I will go option running back. So then, after my initial read of that read defender, that defensive end, then I'm looking at the pitch defender. And sometimes it can be a little bit tricky because he'll usually make a little step inwards, and then sometimes he'll go back and track the bubble. So before you throw that bubble, make sure he fully commits. So I don't know what he's going to do here, but we'll see if we can pick the right call. So he fully committed, and I just throw that out here, and the corner actually makes a good play on the bubble. And so we can run that over and over again just to show you guys the different outcomes of running this play. So again, we'll go option running back. He commits fully. We throw that. We get a good block, and then we're out the races here. Maybe we can make the safety miss and take that for a score. Let's run it 2 more times. Again, I'm just manually optioning the running back. In this case, he actually came back to the bubble, but it's just way too late because of the poor alignment. But let's just pass commit here to make sure he stays out there. And let's actually do a few things. We'll go cover 3 match, we'll pass commit, and we'll option the running back just to show you what can happen when you get your quarterback keep read. And if you have that escape artist, you're out there much, much quicker. Really, really nice. Now, if they are running something like man press, things are still going to be okay for you. But I generally, usually kind of shy away from this, because if you get a situation where you get the third option, which is the bubble, you're often throwing into a kind of a tight spot, because the bubble essentially goes right around the corner and the wide receiver over there, and sometimes it's tricky to get that in. So just to make sure I get that read, I'm going to blitz this guy, and I'm going to option the running back just to show you how it works out. It still works out sometimes, but sometimes it can be a little bit iffy. You see right there, it's kind of in the mud, but I mean, it's not bad. Maybe, to be honest, I should maybe even be using it more. But against man coverage, there's even a better option. And really, this is an option that you can do against anything. And this is to motion this guy over. So you're motioning him over to create this trips look, or really kind of a 4x1 look. And the way I read this is no longer like a triple option. It's kind of like a double option. So I'm really looking for this kind of a pop pass from the wide receiver right here. And I won't even leave him like this. I will actually smart route him. So I'll create a 10-yard curl route, which actually works like a streak because I'll be throwing this relatively quickly here. Usually, this guy isn't way over there. He's pressed in like this. And unless they're pass committing, that man defender is going to leave our guy, and he'll be wide open right there for that easy 10-15 yards. Now, if we can imagine a case where, and this is something you often see, is when your opponent's putting their deep safeties into, some 20-25 yard curl flat zone to defend against corner routes and crossing routes, or if they're putting them in spies, just because you're, by the nature of this ebook, you actually end up running the ball a lot. They're not really going to be over the top here, and you usually get a free one-play score against man coverage. So this is really one of the crazy glitchy things about this ebook that is really your opponent is never expecting, and really, if they're smart enough, they'll have to pass commit against this, and then that just opens up the run game even more. So you see how this goes there, and in this case, we would have actually got a penalty just because the tackle was really far up there. But just speaking from experience, the illegal man upfield happens maybe less than 0.5% of the time. Usually this is just an easy, clear-cut way of getting a one-play score against man coverage. Now, it's not just limited to man coverage. So we can go to, say, cover 2 right here. And this, again, this is going to work like just a regular wide pop option play. Now you still are not blocking the end there, but I'm not running the triple option version of this. I'm just looking at the little alert essentially from the wide receiver Godwin, and then if it's covered by, say, the user, or if they pass commit, then I'll just hand it off. And usually the handoff will be okay anyway, even if the end crashes towards the running back. It's kind of just a last resort type of thing. But if they're pass committing, the linebackers and safeties aren't going to be in the fit, so you're going to be nice. Now this is against cover 2, and you just see this nice little window there. We can get easy 10-15 yards. And because you are running that run action, especially against these gap shooting users, and if you have identifier, you see that they're not really over that wide receiver, you can easily get that in. Just speaking from experience, the user almost never keys on it unless you hit them with it 2 to 3 times, in which case they'll key on that, and then there'll be one fewer run defender. Now this, of course, works in the red zone as well. So I can motion this guy over, and I can smart route him to the goal line right there. And again, unless they're pass committing, the defenders over them are going to be playing the run or the pitch, and then you can simply just throw it to him for an easy score. The other RPO that you can run is this RPO zone peak. You also have a power and a buck sweep version of them, which actually features a bit of a elongated and better slant route in my opinion, but I think just power in general in this game is something to avoid. So I like this RPO zone peak because, again, it's going to protect you from gap shooting user linebackers. So if they are taking this guy here and they are shooting the gap here, so let's just go ahead and blitz to demonstrate that, you're just going to be able to throw it right above him. So just like this and just like that. And if they hesitate even for a second, and just to show that, I'm going to go option quarterback and double team the inside stuff guy. You'll have just gaping holes right in the middle here for 5, 10, 15 yards a pop. So this is really nice against zone coverages. Actually, it's really nice against quite a lot of things. Cover 2 is a little bit tricky because this apex defender really comes in against the run. And then you really have to wait a while in the pocket. So I'm just going to go ahead and option the running back here, and I'll just show you, you have to wait, and it doesn't really work out nicely against cover 2. So it's really not something I'll use against cover 2 too often, just because there are so many hook zones in the middle there to muddy things up. But against single high coverages like cover 3 and cover 1, where I don't necessarily want to run, just a straight up inside zone right into a big stacked box, I'll run RPO zone peak, or I'll still run the RPO read bubble a lot. Against man coverages, cover 2, cover 1, cover 0, it's also good, but you if they're running press man, you really need that slot-o-matic in your slot spot right here, just so he can beat that guy and get open inside. Otherwise, he's going to get kind of stifled, unless they're playing off man coverage. So if they're playing, cover 0, or cover 1 man, you don't really need that ability, but it really helps a lot. So in this case, you can just throw it right there, and a lot of times if you have some speed, you can break that for a much bigger gain. But even, again, if you have slot-o-matic, and if they're playing press man right here, and let me just go ahead and option the running back so we don't have the linebacker there, you'll see he can beat his man and get a step on him and keep going forward from there. So those are the RPOs for this formation. A lot of the times I can really just run RPO right bubble the entire game, like the 2 different versions of it and all the different things that can happen out of it depending on the options. Really, really effective plays. And again, the idea is to really spread the box, lighten the box, put defenders in conflict, put user gap shooting defenders in conflict, and it just really opens up the entire running game and quick passing game. Now, if we are looking towards just straight up passing plays, we also have a number of those in this formation. So against man coverage right here, people really like man coverage. We have this shallow crossplay, double crossplay, which has essentially 5 man beaters. The fade right here, of course, sometimes isn't. If they're shading over the top, that fade will never get open. So, you can put this guy on a comeback, and that could be a good option for you. Or if they're playing straight up press and they're doing things like putting this guy in a curl flat, And if you have a high release guy out there, he can beat his man and get open over the top. So that's, if you want to look at that as your number one read, you can look at that. Essentially, if he beats his man, then you're going there. If he's kind of stifled, then you can go to the rest of the stuff. Or if you just don't like your matchup, you don't have to consider that option at all because you have a number of other good ones. Of course, you do have the post right here. If they don't have the deep middle post safety, you have the post route right here. That's always going to be a good option for you. But again, you almost, unless you're really looking for a deep shot, you almost don't even need to consider that because you have 3 other really good routes right here. So you have the tight end drag, which doesn't get pressed, and usually he'll get a nice deal of separation right there for easy 5, 10, 15 yards. Likewise, in kind of a meshing fashion, you have Chimera right here, which runs this nice little route right here, usually get 5 to 10 yards. And then the little in route from the slot right here, if you have Slot-O-Matic again, he will get open nicely. So right here against a really good corner, you see how he gets open right there, and we can get 10 to 15 yards, no problem. And then again, as I was saying, if they are shading over the top to not press your guy and you don't really like the matchup on the left, you can convert him to a comeback route. How you would throw these is you just have to throw it really, really early, and you don't even need to bullet pass it in a lot of cases. This is Michael Thomas against Jalen Ramsey. You can just kind of lob it out there a few yards early, and then he'll be able to catch that, no problem. I mean, you might have situations where the safety here is in a curl flat or something like that and muddying things up. So, maybe it's something more so to run against a single high cover 1 or something like that. But you have, essentially 5+1 options in this entire play. So really, really, really awesome man beater. And then if you're looking for a good zone beater, you have this really awesome play called switch. So the post route, this little switch concept you have on the right here is really, really nice. To make it a little bit better, what I'll do is I'll drag the tight end and then put the running back on a little curl route. But essentially against cover 3, I'm looking at this post route. So right here, as it kind of hits this sweet spot right here, I can throw that and do a little diving possession catch for easy gain. And then if they are running deep halves on their corners, which a lot of guys will do to protect against the deep bomb, which by the way, this formation has a couple really nice and easy ones. It just makes it even much, much more open. You can throw it even a little bit earlier. You see he bails there and you can just throw that right up the seam for an even easier gain. The wheel is never really something you're gonna throw, but if for whatever reason there's something muddying up the post, you don't like the post, that wheel will usually clear out that curl flat. Unless they're running a hard flat, it will essentially, the game still has this 2-man through matching logic in some of the flat zones where if 2 vertical routes pass through, it'll match the second one. So he'll match and then the drag will be really wide open underneath right here. And in that case, it was not enough time for him to match, but you still had a ton of room. And if you can consider a case where your opponent's user is tracking that drag across the field, you see right that. You have this option to the running back as kind of a last resort as well, which is really, really nice. And the reads aren't really too much different against Tampa 2 right here. So we can set everything up the exact same way. If they don't have the middle third linebacker, you will have this option right here to throw that right between the safeties. And from my experience against 2x2, not a lot of people actually put this guy in a deep third right here. In fact, a lot of people will user him, and even if they don't user him, they might just leave him because they want him in the run fit. Because again, you are running so many of the reads and the read options and the RPOs and things like that. They don't want that linebacker bailing to the deep zone. They want him in there. So from my experience, people don't usually put him there, and usually you can hit him right between those safeties. So you do have that option, but again, if for whatever reason that's being covered, you still have this same read over here where you'll have all this room over here to hit the tight end and also to hit the running back underneath if those first 2 reads don't really work out. So right here you see all this room for the running back, and again 5 to 10 yards. The other interesting thing with switch is that you have a 1-play score essentially against any coverage in the game. So this is something I don't tend to use too often, but if you really need a big score, This is potentially something you could go to, or you know, you could even use it at any point. I don't care. So what I'll do is I'll motion the single wide receiver over here over, and I'll put him on out or even a smart router out. So he has to be breaking outwards. He cannot be breaking inwards, and you cannot adjust. You can't change. Do not change any of the other players. Essentially, you can, however, put the tight end on a check and release right here. So what you're essentially doing is that this is a way, if you are bringing all the routes to one side and a post the other side, it bugs out cover 2 safeties. So in this case, we'll go to cover 2. So it'll bug him out, and you can just throw it right easily over the top. So assuming your protection holds up a little bit, you see you have all this space right here just to throw an easy one-play score. Okay, now we end this formation off with a couple of really nice play action plays. Again, because you are running the ball so much, the play action does actually help a little bit, get the user, you know, a little bit off his mark, and it does affect those zones a little bit. I did a recent video on it. But otherwise, you also have some really good options, especially against single high cover 3. So one thing I like to do is, again, if it isn't obvious, I'm putting the 2 wide receiver side to the field every single time. I just find that things work out a little bit better that way. But if we want a cover 3 beater to the boundary right here, we simply just streak the tight end right here. We let the play action go, and we just go ahead and throw an outside pass lead here, rack that, and we get an easy one-play score. Now, this won't always work out. Again, I was talking to you before how a lot of times people will put these guys in deep halves, and if those are in deep halves, that tight end will be covered. Now, you can still throw it up kind of in a sweet spot above the linebacker and below those deep zones, but you will not be able to get that one-play score shot. Or if they're just playing straight up, I picked the wrong one, cover 1 hole right here, of course, you will have the guy run with him, in which case you do have the comeback right here. Or the other thing you can do, so if you're running this to the boundary right here and you have a deep half safety over there and you can't really squeeze that in, you do have the deep dig on the left. And in a lot of cases, I'll even take out the play action and put the running back on a check down right here. So that'll bring down the linebacker. So if, you know, the user's on this linebacker coming down, or if the user's over here watching the streak over here, I will have the option right here for this deep dig right over the middle right here for a big gain as well. Or if they are, you know, say if the user's on this side and he's sinking underneath the dig, so we'll just do that to simulate things. You do, of course, have your check down at their end right here with the running back right in the middle here for easy 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 yards. The other cover 3 beater you have is to the left. So we'll still do everything over here, but rather than using the dig on the left, we'll put them on a comeback. And, you know, as long as they aren't changing their flats to cloud flats, hard flats, doing different zone adjustments, the apex defender will push our slot wide receiver inside, and that'll allow the corner, if he's not in a deep half assignment, to key on the comeback. And because we have that tight end route holding the safety, we can throw this over to the left side as well. So a number of really, really nice options. You know, there's so many different ways to run this. You can also run an outside release right here, a little fade, so you can get outside of that guy and you can just throw this seam right here, which is really, really nice as well. And that was a little bit of an aside, but if we are running this looking for the shot and they're doing things like bailing into cloud flats or something like that, you can also just quick throw that to the seam right there and just possession catch that. So against cover 3 or these single high coverages where, you know, after running the ball quite a bit, they're trying to bring another guy into the box, you do have potential to hit them over the top or hit them through the seams in a variety of different ways. We showed you with switch, showed you with seam routes to the right, from the tight end, from the left, from the slot wide receiver. Really a ton of options. Against cover 2, like too high stuff, it's not really, really great. If you have high play action, you can bypass the press from the field corner over there. I showed you in a recent video, but even if you don't, There are times where you can, just throw this at a nice spot right here, toe tap that in bounds. You can throw it right there. But that's really something you can get out of almost any play, especially in this formation. So it's something I really just save for these single high coverages. Against too high, even this dagger is a little bit tricky to hit. I mean, you can run it this way again, where if they aren't shading underneath, you can just throw this drag route or potentially the halfback route. And if they're really sinking underneath, you can hit that dagger. But yeah, really a big variety of things. And I probably spent too much time on that because there are still so many things to go over. Okay, so PA read is the last one in this formation. This is good against man coverage and a few different variations of zone coverage as well. So what I'll do is I'll just fade the comeback guy or put him on a streak. I'm just clearing out everybody over there. This tight end route does really well, assuming you have the speed against man coverage, especially on his last cut. He just gets really a lot of separation on his man. The only kind of problem is that he sometimes gets hung up on the end in some of these 4-down formations, and he'll get a little bit slowed down. But by and large, he will beat his man by quite a bit. Assuming you throw a nice pass lead to him, you should be able to catch that. And the other thing is that you have this really nice sharp post over here to the right. Even against the best corners, he will get open right there. Against zone coverage, so just right here, cover 3. Same thing. You could keep the comeback in this case, but really no sense. You can leave it just like this. First thing I'll do is I'll just look for the check down. If the check down on the running back's right there, just go ahead and throw them, and just easy 5 to 10 yards every single time. If it isn't there, so i.e. they're doing something like a hard flat, you will have a number of options. So let's just look at the post right now. So we have the post right here. That's always going to be there. So now this can be tricky if they are running. I mean, if they're running just straight up cover 3, just throw the flat every single time. But if they are running underneath, or if you're just looking for a bigger gain, it can be tricky, throwing that post in cover 3, especially if the user's on the weak side linebacker right here, where he'll look like he'll be covering the crosser and then come back to the post late and pick you off. So really be patient with this one, because usually your opponent will take the crosser for a little bit and then peel back to the post. So if you are patient, you'll see that the tight end is usually able to find this nice little sweet spot right here to get that nice big chunk of gain. And then if all else fails, like, let me just put this guy on, probably should have just used my zone drop adjustments. I don't think I think the tight end gets over cloud flats as well. But if he's, way over here, I'll just manually try to use that area. And you just don't have that crosser. You do have the zig check down at the very end there. So that's something that's not the best option, but it's there if things break down for you. So we start gun trips off with the RPO read bubble play. So this will be very much the same mindset that you have with gun doubles offset weak, where it is really your bread and butter running play out of this formation. In many ways, this is actually a little bit better because you don't have a tight end attached to the offensive line, and so you're spreading the defense out even more. And then there's some similar things we can do with it, but in just slightly different ways. And again, you're just going to be doing the same thing. You're reading the defensive end. Depends on what you do. Whatever he does, you'll hand off to the running back or keep it, and then you'll look at the pitch man, whether you'll throw the bubble or keep it with your quarterback. Usually, a lot of the better players, again, are making you keep that with your quarterback, so you'll end up just handing it off, but you're handing it off with a light box with one fewer defender. So again, if you're coming up against inside stuff, it is always a good idea to double team one of those guys. And so in this case, I give the handoff read and I take it up the gut. And if we get, say, a keep read, so if the option the running back right here, we keep that and then we just scramble up for a ton of yards. There are certain situations, and actually in a lot of different situations, if you do have escape artist on your quarterback, if you get a handoff key, you can actually just keep it with the quarterback. And for whatever reason, some of these plays like this one, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of where you take off. So you could even keep this and run this way right over here where there's fewer defenders and get big chunks of yards that way as well. And what's good is that the running back actually turns into a bit of a lead blocker here. So in that case, he took out the guy that I should have probably double teamed anyway. But you see, you just have a big amount of flexibility in terms of where you're handing the ball off and where you're taking off with your run. So again, it makes it really hard for your opponent to shoot gaps and to really key on where you're going, because first of all, you can hand it off to the left, take off either with your quarterback to the left or the right, and then even still you can throw to your pitch guy over here. So in this case, the read guy is way off, so we have really even more flexibility. We can just take off here, take off in the middle here, and do a lot of damage that way. Of course, you still always have the gift route and the bubble. So the bubble you can sometimes throw just as an alert. If they're really bringing everybody in for the baseline, you can just throw it out there without having to read it. In this case, you would actually read it. Or if you notice the corner playing off on this side over here where the solo wide receiver is and there isn't a apex overhang defender there, you can simply just snap throw that right there and get 5 to 10 easy yards. And the other thing you can do, just like the other one, except you don't have to actually motion across the formation, is that you can motion the tight end to the outside, and then he will turn into a hitch, which you can smart route. So in many cases, I don't know what the actual coverage is here. It looks like actual man coverage. So in this case, actually, you won't get anything out of it because the man defender isn't a read or pitch guy. So he'll actually stay on the hitch, but you do have the option to throw that ball as well. And we can show it here against cover 2 sink right here out of a 3-4 odd look. In this case, you actually have the apex defender is the read defender. So he wouldn't get blocked, and in this case I would be kind of careful with throwing that bubble. But again, you can just turn this tight end into a hitch, and in this case, because that is the read defender, no matter if they do any sort of pass committing or man coverage or anything, he will abandon his assignment to play the quarterback, even though he's way out here. You don't see too much 3-4 odd anymore, but still it makes it just an easy throw for you. But if you want to play around with turning those blockers into hitches, I would actually recommend the RPO read screen. So you can still run this just like the RPO read bubble, where it is, primarily a running play where you're just protecting yourself from over aggressive users and over aggressive defenses. So you can just read the end guy and then read the pitch guy if you want. But you do have a lot of flexibility here in terms of customizing, I guess, this type of play. The one bad thing is that the alignment's kind of weird. So if I go to a regular play like 4 verticals or the RPO read bubble, you see it's nice and spread out nicely. But this one has this kind of compressed alignment, which can sometimes give things away, but there are a few other plays in this formation that have the same alignment. So if you're kind of consistent, you don't really have to worry about it. But you do have the option of turning either one of these guys, the 2 or the 3, into a hitch. And the 3 is usually the one that's above the read and the pitch guys, which will, bite on the quarterback or the running back or that little smoke screen. So usually, right here we have a cover 3. Those guys will commit, and then you can just easily throw that right there. And even with man coverage here, again, we got man across the board. We have people putting, their safeties into flat zones or spies to help against the run. But, you have situations like this. And what's great about this is that sometimes the guy that's above the 3 is a read defender. So even if they pass commit, right here, if I pass commit, he will abandon his guy, and you can just throw that there and get your, easy one-play score or at least a very big gain. Likewise, if they are bringing everybody in for baseline, there are situations where you can just throw that out there immediately, get blockers out there, and take off with your running back, your wide receiver, but just make sure they're not pressed up and really well aligned. Same thing to the left side. We have the gift route over there. I'm not going to show that, but you just see the immense amount of possibilities here that is really gives your opponent a lot to have to consider. And again, you have flexibility here. You can turn the 3 into a smart routed hitch, or you can turn the 2 into smart routed hitch. It really depends on the front and the coverage and how these read and pitch keys align themselves. So that'll be kind of based off of that. But once you play around with it, practice with it, or experience with it through a few games, you'll start to kind of understand where and when not to throw the ball, like I just showed you right there. But that's kind of the beauty of this play, is that if it ever doesn't look really obvious there, now I get it is kind of a quick throw, but if it isn't immediately wide open, you can always just hand it off, or even if you're late on that throw, you can always take off with your quarterback as well. So, if it doesn't look good, you hand that off inside and you still get some yards and keep the chains moving. And this play is especially good in the red zone near the goal line right here. I'll usually, if I'm in within the 10 yards or so, this is a great play to come to, again, because if people aren't really going to be pass committing in this area because the run is a big threat. And then again, if your opponent is wise to what you're doing, they're going to be taking out of the box, and a lot of times you can just hand off and walk into the end zone essentially. But in this case, again, if they're not doing anything in terms of pass committing or anything, you just have this little hitch right here, and you can get probably the easiest possible score you can get there. And then you have the RPO zone stick, which is a really, really unique RPO that you don't see very often. You really don't see many RPOs with an actual fade or go route anywhere like that. Also, this gift route to the left here is really nice because it's a bit of a quicker hitch, so you can really snap throw that in a little bit of a better way. Again, you have a few options here. In ways, it's not as good as the two read RPOs because this is more of a peak RPO, but there's still a lot of really interesting things you can do there. So the halfback run itself is really, really good. You just see this big gap that opens up. And because it is an outside zone, it is blocked a little bit differently. And this year, the outside zone is a little bit easier to control your running back quicker and turn that upfield if you see a hole. You don't necessarily have to bounce that out. A lot of the times, you're just hitting that front side B gap anyway. So a great option there. And then you can still even take off with the quarterback. It's a little bit wonkier than the read, but everybody's getting blocked. So it's essentially, you're not really reading anybody. You could kind of read maybe the user. If the user's over here and they're going to track the running back, you can also take off with your quarterback right here, and you just have these wide open running lanes with actually good lead blocking of the field. Not to mention, you still have some hitches here. They're not as kind of glitchy against man coverage. Coverage is a little bit more sound in these peak RPOs, but you see right here, we can throw that little hitch right there if he doesn't drop the ball. So a lot of situations I'd think about is where, a user brings in this guy and he's a little bit aggressive here, and then we can just throw that hitch right there upfield and turn that upfield. And even this, let me take off here, even this flat route, unless they're pass committing, the flat route is even good sometimes. Even if you don't have blocking, you can just throw that out there, get 5 easy yards. But by and large, against these off zone coverages like cover 3 and quarters and things like that, it's really especially too high in this case where you just have 5 guys in the box, simply just hand it off to the running back or keep it with the quarterback. You saw that, and then you have the hitch option there, and you could even smart route that hitch, make it a little bit longer right there if you want. Has a little bit probably better room. So really, really, really nice. If you suspect cover 2, like if they are pressed up with outside shade or 5 yards off, like typical cover 2 alignment, you can throw that fade. So right here, and this, again, this is assuming your trips is set to the field. If it's set to the boundary, it won't, that corner won't react to the run. But in this case, if they're not pass committing, he will react to the run, and your guy will just completely go around him. And if that safety is not as good as this guy, you can go for big gains. Likewise with man press, if they're really pressing you and not shading over the top, and they have guys, say, in curl flats or maybe in a deep third, something like that, you can, this is something that's kind of rare, but it's kind of, I like the idea of, is that if you do have a good matchup over there, if you have a guy with really high release, you can peak. Like if they do get in a press interaction, and if your guy can win, you can throw that, right? Like in this case, he didn't actually win. But if we'd run that again, so if we peek again, let's see if our guy can win. In that case, he actually wins, and we just throw that over the top there, and we get our 1-play score. Or if they are shading up, and we see at the snap that they don't get in that press interaction, well, we can just hand it off to our running back. Or because it isn't not everybody has split-second reactions. I definitely don't. Even if you're late to hand off to the running back, you can take it up the gut with the quarterback. So in this case, we don't get a press interaction, but we can just take off with our quarterback right here as a last-ditch effort. And now we get to the passing plays. So there's a number of really, really interesting ones that you don't see these types of route combinations in many other books, if at all, or many other play formations, if at all. So this is fade stops. It features this really, really interesting crossing route from the number 3 right here. And what's really cool about this formation is that the tight end is in the number 2 spot and your slot receiver is at the 3. So you can, rather than having a tight end running this route, you could put in your fastest possible guy like a Tyreek or something like that. There is one thing to note is that if you flip the formation, if you're running this to the left, then the tight end will be the 3 and the receiver will be the 2, but there's a package to quickly swap between those guys. So I'd just keep track of that depending on where your ball is to make sure that your speedy guy is always right here. Now, this is a great one-play score against stock cover 3 where they aren't putting their corners into deep halves. All you really have to do is put the boundary fade stop, just extend them with either with a smart route or you can just hitch them up right like this. And then with the back, we'll get into a couple of different things, but you can generally just, swing them out or, put them on a little option right here. And then assuming we have a little bit of time in the pocket, you see we can just throw that right here, right over the corner and outside that safety for that big, huge gain. But if you want to be a little bit smart about it, so if you don't know for sure if they're running a regular deep third over there, potentially they are running a deep half, some cool things you can do. You can essentially make a legitimate 3-level read where you have your deep shot, which is a legitimate deep shot. It's not just a straight up streak to take the top off. You can smart route this fade stop, which gets a little bit deeper than your curl, and then you can swing your running back out to that side as well, so you have that kind of last ditch effort there. So if they are running a half over there, that will take your deep crosser, but you will have some space right here to hit that hitch, or that fade stop. And that will generally work against the regular flat zones like your cloud flats, your hard flats, your curl flats, and so on. But if they are using big zone drops, I'm a little bit lazy to do that here, but if they are using big zone drops, maybe I'll just manually keep this guy up here, where your top 2 routes are getting covered, then of course you do have the back as a last option right there, and you take that up the field for your 5 to 10 yards. Now where this is also really nice is against man coverage. So right here, man across the board, people don't run deep halves, right? They either run flats here or deep thirds and things like that. But what's great is that, again, because you have your tight end at the 2 and your slot at the 3, you have a big mismatch here. Now people will put safeties here, not linebackers, right? But it's still not going to be their best, fastest corner with, acrobat and one step ahead and things like that. So you have a big mismatch there. And no matter if they have, if they're shading over the top or underneath or whatever, this route really does a good job of getting open right here. So you can just throw that you could even lob that over the top there and you have big potential for a huge gain. But again, it's really very important for you to flip, use that package. I think it's tight end, wide receiver flip, something like that. So if you are running these guys to the left, you want to make sure you have your speed guy at the 3. And very similarly, you have this play for verticals, which works in some similar ways, but allows you to do a couple of different things. It's in many ways better, but it's almost useless against man coverage. This route stock against man coverage is pretty good, but you can generally use that pretty easily. But it's really a great play against a lot of these different zone coverages here. So again, you have a deep shot against cover 3, like just a regular old cover 3. The things that I would do in this case is, again, I will hitch this boundary guy over here. With the back, you can do whatever. You can leave him on this route. I really like this option route because he gets in a nice sweet spot that you can check down in. And then what I would do is, unless it's a really third and really long or something like that, you should be okay with smart routing this guy, and it gives you this ridiculous extension to his route, and it might take a little bit longer, but it's useful in many ways. So in this case, again, we can get over the top of cover 3 right here and get our 1 play score. But what's really unique about this one is that if they are running a deep half over there, we aren't totally dead in the water with our big shot. So what we can do is it's the exact same setup here, but we have the opportunity to actually hit this crossing route between those two zones, the deep zone and the intermediate zone. And let me just put these guys on contains. Of course, this isn't a quick progression passing concept. It's really when you're looking for a big shot. So in this case, what we can do here is just wait for him to cross around, and then we can kind of throw a low ball in this area. And you saw even with Kyler Murray there, I was able to get that in. But if you have, now, of course, I recommend these more mobile guys, but if you are running the gunslinger and things like that, that's just going to rip right in there. So it's really, really difficult to defend, because if they're running that deep half, you can just throw it in that sweet spot. If they're running a deep third, you just throw it right above them. Now, I'm sure there are ways of defending this, but it's really nice where your shot setup is still able to get you a big play. And then if we are coming up against really deep zone drops, so I set these curl flats to 25 yards, and we are putting this guy in a half, then there's no way that you can throw to that crosser, but you do have a couple checkdowns, right? You can throw to this guy, which potentially the user might be on. But then because your flat defender is so deep, well, then you just simply throw this curl right underneath it, right? So that's something you can look for before hitting that crosser. And then even if they're doing some sort of multi-flat thing where they're putting this guy on a 10-yard, I won't be able to do this now, but if they're putting both of those guys out there, you can always hit the back, or you can add him to that read as well. So you can do something like this. So if everybody's kind of going back, again, you always have the opportunity to swing the back across as well. And likewise, just to round this play out with cover 2 as well, things don't really change. Really the same setup here. As long as we have a little bit of time in the pocket here, we can find this nice little sweet spot right here between those two intermediate and deep zones. And to round out the plays on gun trips is this play called Sail, which really doesn't have any hot routes or adjustments to do. You just straight up run it. It features this awesome crossing post type of route from the solo guy, which gets open really against most coverages unless the user's involved there, in which case we have this nice check down from the number 2. So against cover 3, it's really your tightest. You just have to practice a little bit. Once he gets to a certain spot, you just inside pass lead, click on that and catch that. If your opponent really sinks underneath that, so let's just go simulate that with this. So if he sinks underneath that, of course you have this beautiful little hitch right here. Take that upfield. If both of those get taken out, you're kind of out of luck. This out route isn't really great against any sort of those flat zones. You could potentially do some funky things with swinging this guy out, but it's really just a simple play to get you a few yards here and there. Against cover 2, unless again, because this is primarily a running look, you see more deep third middle linebackers than you do doubles offset weak, but you still sometimes see situations where guys will use that, or they just won't put anyone there, and then you see your post right here get into that nice sweet spot. Likewise, if it does get covered, or even if it doesn't get covered, you can always throw underneath the tight end. And then similarly against man coverage, whether it's press or shaded up, that route does a really good job of getting open. So we'll just do, even if we put a middle third there and a flat over here, you can get in a nice position where your guy's getting inside position, and then you just throw with an inside pass lead and you can catch that ball. And your second read for man coverage won't really be this hitch, but you do have this really nice matchup right here. Again, if you have Slot-O-Matic on your guy, even if he's against a really good corner, he's going to beat his guy. But in this case, he'll just beat him much, much more. because it's not a really good corner. So in this case, see that nice out route there, getting some nice gain. The one play I included from Gun Wing Slot Week is kind of an extension or just a plug of a recent video I did of a really easy and consistent way of scoring in the red zone or kind of near the goal line against really any sort of defense. This is something that can actually be run out of really any formation, but I just tend to like it out of this one, so I'll show it out of this one, and the play doesn't even really matter. So I just pick slants here. And the idea is that you are taking one of the receivers, so I'll take Cook in this case, and I'll run him on an out route, a smart routed out route, so he'll break at the goal line there, and then I'll just sprint out with my quarterback, and I'll hit him in this, like right at the sideline where whatever coverage it is, zone or man, for whatever reason they don't cover that last kind of yard, and you can usually sneak that in there. One thing that I didn't include in that video, and this is something that people are doing a lot lately, is that they are putting tight ends in check and release, or sorry, delay and release, or block and release hot routes right here. So I can put the interior guy on any sort of block and release, and that actually cancels out contains. So in this case, I'm putting a contain on this guy, and that'll cancel him out and make it so it's really consistently easy to get out of the pocket. So in this case, you see we're able to get out of here, and then I find this little sweet spot right there and get my easy touchdown. So why I like it out of this formation is because I can have that nice out route coming from, it can come again in a variety of places. I just like it from an interior look. And then I have another tight end that I can run that special blocking from. So I don't even know what coverage this is. Looks like some sort of zone coverage, but you always have some room to sneak that in there. And the other thing with this is that if you do, check and release this guy, though you almost never will really have to, but if their user is really keying on that and is really heavily coming out to stop that edge, you can release him, and then you can also throw that to him as well as another option. Or in some situations, if everything's kind of breaking down, and if you see an opening, you can just run it in yourself if you'd like as well. Probably isn't the best option, but it's there as well. But yeah, if you find yourself near the goal line a lot and you already exhausted a few of the read RPOs that I showed you in the other formations, you can go to this as well. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of better. In some ways, maybe it's a little bit trickier, but you have already a number of options here. So moving on to the last formation here is doubles Y off, which is a really, really fantastic formation that you rarely see people coming out in. And I think it's really good formation in spread and also really good in this Carolina playbook. The play that we will start with is this RPO right here. So this is the RPO zone Y peak. And I actually covered this play near the beginning of the year, where this angle route from the tight end is really, really nasty because if I don't know what defense we're in here, but if it's a Tampa 2 or something like that, this player will come in to play the run, and you can always find this little sweet spot right here to throw to that tight end. It's really, really easy. And then if they're in man coverage, they just get really roasted by that. Just like the halfback angle route, he'll get roasted by that. So it's a really, really nice route. And then you also have the running back read off of it. So you can throw the tight end, or you can hand it off to the running back, just like any other RPO that I'm going with here. But the way that I'm actually starting to run it now is that I'm actually using, I'm considering it like a quarterback RPO, I guess. So in some cases, I can still hand it off to the running back. In this case, we have an open B gap over there to the left, and it could be good. But I actually like keeping it with the quarterback as well. So what I'll look at is this guy wide open? If he's wide open, I'll just throw it to him. If he's not, that means the run defense isn't good, and I'm just taking off with the quarterback. So in this case, I have a big opening right here, easy throw to the tight end. So I'll just keep running a few random plays right here. In this case, he's open again. Throw that there, rat catch that. If you have a fast enough tight end, you can get a big score. And eventually, if we run this enough, in this case, he was again open. So you see this, in a lot of cases, you don't even need to take off with the quarterback. You just have so much space there for the angle route. But, as easy as this looks, it's still something you really have to practice. In this case, I'd probably double team this guy and just go ahead and hand this off because you have so few numbers on the left there. So just like a lot of those read RPOs and other RPOs that I'm showing you, just have a ton of options here going every which way. So again, let's see, I probably could have taken off there, but I took off with the quarterback instead. So this is another 3 straight big, huge gains for a touchdown. So this stuff is really dependent on the abilities that you have at quarterback. So if you don't have one of these really fast guys with the nice scrambling abilities, you can still run this regularly with the angle and the the running back handoff. But if you do, it really, really opens things up more. So in this case right here, I just take off with the quarterback and you just see all this room here. Because that angle route was open, the run defense was poor. But yeah, it's just really imperative that you practice this stuff and get that intuition of, is that tight end open? If he is, just throw that. If he's not, so in this case, he was open, toe tap that. But in other cases, like here, like one thing you'll really want to watch out for is, especially if you have a defensive end or an outside linebacker right here dropping in zone or man coverage, usually those guys are able to do a good job of covering that tight end. If he drops, so in this case he didn't drop, and again I just had a big gain. And likewise, you also have the RPO zone peak, which is very similar, but you have just a different route concept right here. So same alignment and everything, same ability to take it off with your quarterback, but rather than having that angle route with a little in behind it, you have a slant flat combination. I tend to like this more against single high and the other one against 2 high safeties. But it really doesn't matter so much. What's also nice is that this flat route, first of all, can sometimes get open really big, but it also pulls away. You see how it pulled away that flat defender? So I was able to have a much bigger running lane there. So in some cases you can go to this one, but I think the zone Y peak is better in a lot of situations. So here against man coverage, you can just go ahead and throw that slant. In some cases, you can probably get away with, like I was saying, you could throw this flat route right here, get a few yards. And if you don't want to, stress too much to the side over there to the right, again, you have the option always to hand it off with the running back and get a few yards the other way. And this formation has a few nice plays with jet motion as well. A couple of really, really nice plays as well. The first one is just really simple, the jet fake zone. I think this is still very much a underrated type of play throughout, all playbooks. And this is something, again, another really nice option in the red zone for just another wrinkle to throw to them when you're in that area. You have a couple options here with the fake zone where you're faking the handoff to the running back, and you also have the jet touch pass. I think like intuition, you would pick the jet touch pass because you have the lead blocker and the running back, but I actually believe, and actually, as a matter of fact, this is the much better option right here, and you'll see why. So if I run this with the fake zone, it actually holds the linebackers. So right here, if I go ahead and run it, you see that they kind of take a step inside, and I have all this space to work on the outside. However, if I run the jet touch pass, I have that extra blocker, but just watch how the linebackers flow in this case. You see they take a step to the outside, and though it's still an okay run, it's definitely not as good. So this is actually a tip that you can take all throughout. These jet passes, or these jet handoffs with the fake zone is really, really the way to go. I would really only use the touch pass one if they're mugging the A gaps and those linebackers can't really flow. In that case, you could use that extra blocker, like say if it's double A gap blitz type of thing. But otherwise, against all the coverages, I think this is definitely the superior option there, especially if you have a little bit of blocking on the outside. Or if you have somebody that's not Adam Thielen, somebody with a little bit better ball carrying, so you can just immediately turn that upfield right there to get a bare minimum 5 to 10 yards. And the play that actually hands off the ball to the running back off of that really still isn't great. You're taking a blocker out of the picture, so you're running into more numbers. Plus, the handoff is still really, really slow. But, sometimes if you're just having a little bit of fun, towards the end of the game, if you have it, it's something nice to run. Or if you really see your opponent heavily going to chase that jet, then I've had some success where those runs pop off for big. But in general, I'm really only running this once or twice a game anyway. The better thing to run off of this is this play action, which isn't the best play, but if you want to run something off of it, some sort of fake, this is an option for you. I think against man coverage right here, so press man coverage, the tight end route is pretty good, and same with the post. Unfortunately, you can't do any hot routes, so that comeback kind of gets a little bit in the way. But you see right here, and especially if the user's vacating like crazy, you see all the separation that the tight end gets. And what you also saw there is that the blocking gets a little bit wonky, so then pressure kind of gets in your face, and in that case I had to throw under pressure. But if the blocking works out, you see that this crossing route just tends to get really high separation. In reality, it probably won't be as much because these are still linebackers I have here. Even if it's Levante David against a safety, it won't be as much, but you still do get a decent chunk. And then, of course, if you have the user completely out of position, you also have the ability to hit this post route over here. So that's pretty nice. And then against, zone coverages, sometimes you can check down to the running back or the crosser if they're playing hard flats. But really, you're banking on their user getting out of position, and then you can throw the post above them against zone coverage as well. So not the most amazing play, but it's there. If you run that, if you had a little bit of success with that, the jet fake zone, you can run this off of that. I think it's a better option than the actual zone handoff. But if you really want to get crazy, you do have the fake jet pass power as well, which gets, you're getting crazy amount of extra blockers, right? You're getting the jet guy, you're getting the running back, plus you're getting the power puller. So you have 3 extra blockers to the play side, and then you have your quarterback running, which this year doesn't really fumble. So this is a great play to, if you need a home run, say if, it's the last play of the game, and, a deep shot will never really be able to do anything like that. This has a chance of popping off, or really just here and there if you want to give yourself a break. You're making reads, you're doing inside runs and RPOs and stuff like that the entire game. This one's just nice because it's just, you don't really have to think too much about the coverages and things like that. This is just a good old-fashioned power running play where you can just take off, and a lot of times it has potential to pop off big just because of the nature of having the numbers. Now, you have to get a little bit of a feel for how to do it. So 2 things I'll stress. You really, 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 really need to be patient. So really hold off on the sprint until you're completely clear. And in some cases, I would almost even just pause for a bit with the quarterback and let your blockers. Otherwise, you're just going to run into them and not do anything. And the other thing is, because there is a lot of movement there, it's sometimes easy to get a little bit lost. What I do is I kind of follow the outside shoulder of the right tackle or the tackle to that side, and that kind of helps me guide things. So sometimes I'll still bump into guys, but in a lot of cases, you can find that space. I find that you'll always have the ability to bounce it like I just did there to get your 5 to 10 yards. But the real strong suit and the real magic here is when you can find that alley between all your blockers and just take off right there. So right there, I had a bit of a missed block at the end, so it wasn't as big, but still pretty good. And right here, it's pretty stacked here with the bare front. But again, we have all these numbers, and we just have all this space to work here. Again, I had a missed block there. Godwin's kind of letting me down, but by and large, if you're running this over and over again, you are going to have a lot of potential to pop off for big gains. So again, this can be run anywhere you want. It can be run here, it can be run, towards the goal line. It can be run if you need a really key first down at the end of the game or something like that. You have that option as well. And even if they're, run committing right here, I have run commit on, because you have all sorts of numbers. And with run commit, you especially have a lot of option to bounce it outside. But yeah, it really just goes back to what I was saying. It's just a nice play to give you a break where you don't have to think too much. It's not always going to pop off like I showed you there. Sometimes you get stuffed. But if you're patient and if your blocks work out for you, things can work out for you. 2 stuffs in a row, but let's see if we can end that with a bit of a better run. Yeah, again, we had to bounce it, but still worked out pretty nicely. And now we get into the passing plays. So we are going to start off with the play flood, which is a really, really simple play. I like this on 3rd or 4th down against heavy man guys, and I just really need that first down to keep running. You will have these deep out routes, so you don't have to hot route. Say if it's 3rd and really short or 4th and short, these out routes are really, really good, but if you are smart routing to 1 or 2 yards, they don't really get that separation. So it's nice to have this deep out from the tight end and this deeper in from the slot guy to give you 2 options. And essentially, both of those routes are going to get open against man coverage, and the flat zones and the deep thirds and things like that people put in to supplement their man coverage aren't really going to be into play here. So both of those will get open. You're just looking at the user defender. Usually they don't take the tight end, and that's my first read. If they end up taking the tight end, I'll just throw it back to my slot-o-matic slot receiver. So in this case, don't have to do much. Just throw it at the break right here, and in a lot of cases, I'll just possession catch that. Make sure I get my first down and move on from there. But again, if you have a nice slot-o-matic in the middle, he usually wins there, and if the user's on the tight end, you have this as a backup option. So really, we can keep it simple there, just with those 2 routes. I'm really only running this play against man coverage. If it's press man without deep halves, you can look at this option over here. Does your guy win at the press? If he does, you can just throw it over the top and get a big score, a big play that way. And then likewise, you have the post route right here, which does a good job, obviously, against any sort of man coverage, just depending on if they have that middle safety there or not. In a lot of cases they do, and you can't really throw that as nicely, but if they have that middle safety, it means they don't have a deep half, and if your guy wins here, you'll have that option. If things break down, and if it does turn out to be something like zone coverage, you can always just throw the little table route right here. So if it is zone coverage, you got that bare minimum 5 yards. And then if they are, running underneath zone coverage with the hard flats or something like that, that the deep out isn't as nice as a corner route, but against those aggressive underneath zones, you can hit that as well. So again, by and large, a play against man coverage, especially just to get that 3rd or 4th down, awesome play to go to. Against zone, you have a few other options. And one of those options is Y sail right here. So this is a really awesome play against zone coverage. Really, there isn't too much there against man, but against zone, really, really terrific. The way I'm reading it is, I'll look at the fade here as an alert against cover 2 if it's a, hard flat there, or they're really being aggressive idiots and putting their deep third corners into flats or something like that. I'll sometimes peek over there, see if he's open. In the odd case, he is, and you can just throw that. But by and large, you are really going to be throwing this table route a lot to get your 5 to 10 easy yards. And then, of course, if they are shading underneath, you can't throw that table route to the running back, but this isn't the best corner route, but you do have that option as well. And whether it's cover 3 or cover 2, it's really the same. High-low read. You're just isolating that flat defender, whether it's the apex defender or the corner in the flat. It's a simple read. But if the user is getting involved there, or they're bringing out multiple zones, you also have the backside. So I'll look at the dig usually as my 4th read, or my kind of 3rd read, and then the hitch will be my final read. So by the time I decipher the right side, usually I'd never have to go to the left side, but I can see, is this guy open? If he is, throw that. Or if I don't have that, and if you're running cloud flats with deep hooks and deep flats, chances are he won't be. Actually, in this case, he was still open. Gets open really the majority of the time. But let me just make sure. So if they have things like cloud flats, which a lot of people run, pretend this is the user going to cut that dig. In a lot of cases, you really never come down to this last option, but it's still a nice option to have that hitch. So really straightforward there. It's kind of a first, second down type of play to just get the yards rolling. You're not looking for the big shot. You're really looking for this immediately, this table route. So against any sort of zone coverage, it's really hard not to get good yards off of this. Same thing with hard flats. You know, Tampa 2 actually does a good job of defending this side over here. But, you know, by and large, you never really have to get there. You know, you'll have the flat or you'll have the corner route right here. And then on the weak side, you know, it's still tough to defend with zone coverage. And you also have this play angle curls, which features this nice elongated inside release curl route. Plus a nice Texas concept right here in the middle here, and then a useless fade stop over here, which I'll usually just convert to a fade just to push guys out of there. Against cover 3, this curl gets in a nice spot. The corner actually plays it really, really well, so you actually have to kind of lowball it right there and catch that. But against cover 3, you know, if they are running regular thirds over there, and if you notice that, you can, of course, just do this type of thing. You know, regular thirds are really susceptible to big plays over the top. So if you notice somebody being a little bit more passive and running those deep halves there, this curl route gets much, much more open right here in a spot where none of those zones really cover. Again, you have the Texas concept. This is a little bit tricky against user defenders, against cover 3. Like if they are this guy, you know, if they're this guy, they might defend the curl and then you can throw the Texas. If they're this guy, it's kind of easy to bait a little bit, but otherwise, you know, it's pretty easy to just clear the linebacker out and hit underneath. Against cover 2, again, you know, same thing with Texas. You know, tight end's going to clear out that middle read and you have all this space underneath. Against cover 2, the curl flat combination really isn't great. If you really want to throw it, you can turn the slot into a hitch and you can throw that to him right underneath there for easy 5 to 10 yards. And then against man coverage, of course, you know, the angle route is terrific, but everything else really isn't great. So what I'll do is I'll slot the receiver over here, I'll slant the slot receiver over here, and then you essentially kind of have a mesh between your running back and your slot. So you can go ahead and throw it right here to your slot guy. In that case, I didn't clear out my wide receiver. So that's what I was kind of talking about towards the beginning. This fade stop really just gets in the way. So I'll just fade him out of there. And then if I just run this again, you know, again, I have my guy win, but in this case, he has all this room to work right here underneath. And then likewise, you probably saw it on both of those other ones, but you do have the running back as well getting open. So you're really kind of looking at the user there and just picking the side that he doesn't. And the very last play I'm going to go over is another kind of man beating type of play, and this is the double stop and goes. I think I went over this play briefly at the start of this game, but it's still something that you can kind of use. So it's great against press man coverage or even off man coverage as well, without the deep half safeties, obviously. So cover 1 look like this, or, you know, the cover 2 man with the guys in the flats are going to be great, particularly against people that are shading over the top. So shading over the top will prevent you against getting beat deep, but in this case it actually helps because the press doesn't mess things up and the double move usually wins in this case. So you'll notice that I actually made some substitutions at the wide receiver spots. I put in Diggs and Hilton. I think the smaller receiver type, I think they do a little bit better in this regard. I'm not sure. I think all receivers can do well here, but I think they do a little bit better here. And what's great is that because you have 2 of these, it seems to work out that at least one of those gets open on any given play. What I'll do is I'll actually smart route those so that that move happens quicker. And then you'll see, you know, one of those guys will win. Actually, in this case, the left guy won, but I threw it to the right guy, so I'll have to go back into the instant replay. Okay, so right here, I thought he won, but he really didn't. Over here, Diggs won, so you had a bit of a step on Jalen Ramsey, and you could have thrown that over the top. So I'll just go ahead and run that again, and really, again, it's really just, in every case, at least one of those guys will get open deep. In this case, we had Diggs again. So in that case, we had, you know, actual press coverage, and Hilton really torched his man. Okay, so that's it for this. I know that was a very, very long video, you know, with a lot of detail on all of these different plays. But even still, you know, there are a few nuances and different things that you'll learn along the way. And then if you have a few other questions, definitely leave those in the comments. I'll happy to help you along in that regard. I think this is a really fun formation. I think it's challenging in a lot of ways, but I think because of that, it's really rewarding. Okay, so everything that you need to know is here. Again, feel free to ask questions in the comments. If you want that reference sheet to help you along the way, I know it has helped me to kind of look at my plays at a kind of global view, so I can see them all when I'm running my running throughout the game, and I can kind of quickly reference which ones are good in which situations. And then sometimes I forget about good plays, and those give me a nice helpful reminder. So if you want that, or if you just want to support my channel, definitely check that out in the description, or probably in the first comment below. There'll be a link to do that. Otherwise, that's it for this one, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.